Those of you who don't know me, I'm Charles Grandy, and Mark is not going to be here today. I'm the vice president of doom and gloom for the organization, so you get me this morning. I only say that because today is probably a day of good news. If anybody's been watching the lake level since our last meeting, strangely enough, the Corps agreed to discontinue discharges to the east, and that was a bit risky on their part. But since that's happened, the lake has probably dropped about close to 2 feet. So we're in a whole lot better shape than we were a month ago. And after the presentation, we have somebody here from the Water Management District. And I just would like to get an answer. I noticed that all of a sudden, we're sending a whole lot more water south than we have in a long, long time, which is another cause for celebration. Now, I'm looking at that, I see two possibilities. One is the agricultural community has been asking for more irrigation water. Or the other possibility is the Water Management District has suddenly decided that they're going to increase, generally speaking, the amount of water they release from the lake to send south. So whichever cause that was, at some point today, we'd like to hear from the Water Management District. If everyone could get up and join me in the pledge this morning. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Do we have any, can the elected officials please stand up so we see? Good morning, Sarah. Good morning. And Sarah is my hero, so. We'll get right into the presentation this morning, and we're going to hear from Joe Bonacea on the right to clean water. So you're on.
Good morning, everybody. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to tell everybody about our constitutional amendment to give all Floridians a fundamental right to clean and healthy waters. Just waiting for the slide to come up. Can we go to the next one? Thank you. So I live in Lee County on the West Coast. About 2 weeks ago, one of our former Lee County commissioners, Ray Judah, who I believe is one of the directors for Vote Water, wrote an op-ed, and he was talking about the water releases, and he was talking about water management down here in South Florida in general. And he reminded everybody of that popular definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. He was referring to Floridians doing our best to vote the right people into office and having the right stuff done for our waters and not succeeding. What he was calling for is for us to do something different. Doing the same thing over and over is not going to improve our waters. 2 weeks later, he published another op-ed and he endorsed our constitutional amendment. We're looking for something new to change the rut we're in. This is it. So I want to take a few minutes to put our effort in the context of what is happening nationally, because Florida is not the only state that is pursuing constitutional environmental rights. And I also want to note that I am chair of a Florida Rights of Nature Network, It was not our original intention to take on this huge task of amending the Constitution. Our intention was to work locally, local governments changing their laws, passing rights of nature laws. Biggest success, Orange County in 2020, 89% of the voters there passed their right to clean water amendment. Our legislature came in, they took those rights away by preempting the authority of local governments to pass laws giving any rights to nature, or to give citizens any rights to any aspect of the natural world. No right to clean air, no right to clean water. It was that preemption that compelled us to say, okay, if they are not going to let us tackle our water quality problems at the local level, we have to go over their heads. We are going to do what other states have already done and that 20 other states in the nation are currently pursuing. So I want to talk to you about two important cases. The first goes back about 10 years. It was in Pennsylvania, a big fracking state. In 2011, their state legislature passed and the governor signed a notorious piece of legislation called Act 13. It would have compelled local governments to allow fracking operations virtually anywhere anyone wanted to do it, and regardless of the zoning laws, it would have been permissible. So obviously fracking comes with a great deal of environmental harm, health impacts to people. By the way, there was a gag rule. Doctors weren't allowed to talk publicly about the impacts that they were seeing in their patients. So much to their credit, a number of small towns filed a lawsuit. They took the state to court contesting the constitutionality of Act 13. By the way, it's worth noting that many of the legislators who signed that piece of legislation never read it. The governor that year had accepted $1.7 million in contributions from the fracking industry. It was attorneys of the fracking industry who wrote the legislation. This sort of thing is indicative of what happens in many places, including Florida. So, file a lawsuit. It went all the way up to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And that ruling was a game changer. The Supreme Court there, which was a conservative Supreme Court, agreed with these townships. They said key provisions of that law were unconstitutional because, and if we can go to the next slide. Back in 1971, Pennsylvania voters voted to amend their state constitution, giving themselves the most basic of environmental rights: clean air, pure water, and the rest of what you see over there. What I really like about this particular example is that usually rulings like this, when you read them, they're about 20 pages long. This one, written by the Chief Justice, was 162 pages. He went to great lengths to detail the history of environmental degradation in Pennsylvania. Timber industry, coal industry, fracking industry, to make the following point. If we could go to the next slide. It is not a historic accident that the Pennsylvania Constitution now places citizens' environmental rights on par with their political rights. The political rights we're talking about, those other fundamental rights, right to free speech, freedom of religion, right to bear arms, etc. These citizens understood the paramount importance, the fundamental importance of having basic environmental rights at the constitutional level. They knew what they were doing. We want to do the same thing. I would note that there have been other cases after this in Pennsylvania, and I can provide folks with a list of them, but I want to jump to something a little bit more recent right now, and something I hope that you know about. And if we go to the next slide, please. I hope you know that last summer, there was a very important youth climate case in Montana. In Montana, there was a law in their books that said that their DEP could not take environmental consequences into consideration when weighing permits for fossil fuel operations in the state. You would think that's what a DEP should be doing. Anyway, these 16 young people filed a lawsuit. They said that that violated their constitutional rights. Back in early 1970s, Montana voters amended their state constitution, giving all citizens a right to a clean and healthy environment. These young people argued that that fossil fuel friendly law was aggravating climate change and impacting them. And the court agreed. There have been other youth climate cases, as I'm sure you know. So far, none of them have been successful. This is the only one that has been successful because it was based on the constitutional amendment in the Montana Constitution. I want to just give one more example to highlight the fact that this is not all about lawsuits. You don't have to have a lawsuit in order for the Constitution to have great impact. Popping back to Pennsylvania, in Delaware County, apparently there was 178 acres of forest left, and somebody wanted to develop there. Well, there were a lot of people who were opposed to this. Apparently it's very precious to a lot of people. They've spent a lot of time there, a lot of hiking. And so it had to go before the town council. And this is what one of the council members said. We go to the next. I look at this as a fiduciary duty because as township officials, we're elected to do what's best for our township. And I've listened to people and I've heard what they have said. And I'm not going to say anything different because we have a duty under Article 1, Section 27 of the Pennsylvania Constitution, that's their Green Amendment, to protect and preserve the Commonwealth's natural resources. And I'm going to quote from that. So everybody has this in their head. And I'm sure everybody has read this by now, that people have a right to clean air, pure water, and he read the rest of the statement. If we can go to the next slide. I personally believe this trumps everything else. Any code you may have, any by right you say you may have, anything else. This is the role of us as municipal government to protect our natural resources as best we can, especially when there's not many left. I mean, if you look at Delaware County and you look at this area, this is it. This is the last little piece that we have, and we're not, and I'm not going to let houses be built on it. And it was their constitutional amendment that allowed him to get up there and say what he did. And unanimously, the board voted against developing this land. You don't always have to have a lawsuit. Just having it there can bring change. I want to just bring one more thing up before I get to our particular amendment, because just this week, a friend forwarded to me a new article in the Pace Environmental Law Review. The value of constitutional environmental rights and public trusts. It examined very many of the lawsuits that have been brought up in the 6 states that currently have environmental rights in their constitutions. It went through all of the benefits. One sentence in its concluding paragraph is this: constitutional environmental provisions are at the apex in our hierarchy of environmental and natural resources laws. It's not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve everything, but it is super important, and we need it here in Florida. So I'm going to talk specifically about our amendment. If we could jump a couple of slides ahead. Oh, keep on going. One more. There we go. When we, back one. Yep. So should we approve successful in qualifying for the 2026 ballot, as we intend to, this is what you will see. This is the ballot summary from the 2026 amendment. This amendment creates an enforceable fundamental right to clean and healthy waters, authorizing a person to sue for equitable relief when a state executive agency, by action or inaction, allows harm or threat of harm to Florida waters. Key words there: fundamental. There are different levels of rights. There are no rights higher than fundamental rights. No other rights carry as much weight in a court of law. Fundamental right to clean and healthy waters, authorizing a person to sue for equitable relief, fair remedies to our problems down here. To hold a state executive agency accountable when, by their actions or their inactions, our state agencies allow harm to our waters. They issue permits to build in wetlands, to suck millions of gallons out of springs. Also by their inactions, not enforcing current water quality standards and such. This amendment provides for strict judicial scrutiny of such action or inaction, and then it adds available remedies. We're talking about injunctive relief, declaratory relief. A court could compel our agencies to stop the harm. We'll talk about that momentarily. It identifies affected constitutional provisions, provides for enforcement, defines terms. People always want to know, well, what do you mean by this? What does clean water mean? What does harm mean? It is defined in the full text of the amendment. I urge everybody to read the entire amendment. And requires attorney's fees and costs to prevailing plaintiffs. So if we can go to the next slide, I want to pop to part of the main text. This is the enforcement part. This gets to what I believe is the heart of the newly worded amendment. Because the claim under this amendment is based on a fundamental right, strict scrutiny shall apply. This is important. Strict scrutiny means that the court must examine the issue as deeply as it can, simply because fundamental rights are just too important to allow violation. Wherein the state executive agency may raise an affirmative defense that its action or inaction promoted a compelling state interest and was narrowly tailored to advance that interest by the least intrusive means. Deference shall be given to the best available scientific information. That's kind of legalese. I'm going to do my best, I'm not an attorney, to put it in terms that everyone can understand. If our state agencies are going to allow harm to our waters, they must have a compelling state interest for doing that. Something, somehow, more important than what clean and healthy waters mean to the public interest of all Floridians. In the full text, the first full paragraph is the purpose paragraph. It talks about all the public interests that clean water represents for us. Clean drinking water, healthy ecosystems, healthy local and state economies, our quality of life down here, a rich fishing tradition. Consider just how vital our waters are. If the state is going to harm them, it has to have a reason that somehow is more important than clean and healthy waters. In those cases where they do have such a compelling interest, and I'll identify one momentarily, then they still have to make sure that they have done everything reasonably possible to minimize that harm as much as possible. You have to cause harm to fulfill this compelling interest? Okay, make sure that it is no more harm than what is absolutely necessary. If our state agencies fail to meet these common sense measures, with this amendment, we have the standing to take them to court. And the agencies have their opportunity to show that they've got a compelling interest. They've done everything that they can to limit harm. But if they can't do that, then the court can compel the agencies to do what they have to do so the people's right is not violated. That's what this comes down to. Pretty common sense to me. Yeah, going to harm the waters, have a heck of a good reason. You're going to do it, minimize the harm. If not, we can take you to court, and the courts will make you do what you're supposed to do. Let's talk about a very specific example. Can we go to the next slide? What? Keep on going. Another one. I just said all that. One more. Lake Okeechobee. Water releases from Lake Okeechobee would give us a cause of action. They harm waters down here. They harm waters down in Southwest Florida, where I live. That is a violation of this amendment. We have the standing to take the state agencies involved to court. Yes, it is true that it is the Army Corps of Engineers that releases the water. That's a federal agency. But they have lots of agreements with the state. So the state is able to be brought into this, and the state agencies, who, after all, is responsible for the quality of the water in Lake Okeechobee. It's not just the quantity coming down, it's the terrible quality of the water. So it goes to court. The court ends up looking at the scientific information. It's insulated from the special interests. We're looking at the science. It's one of the strengths of this amendment. I'm sure most everybody here knows that the Blue-Green Task Force came up with, what, 32 recommendations, scientifically based recommendations. After 5 years, what percentage of those have been implemented? 13%. We want science dictating what is best for our waters. So, a couple of years ago, T.C. Palm found out that there are 32 water basins around Lake Okeechobee, which currently are not meeting water quality standards. Sometimes the pollution levels are 20 times higher than they should be. They found out that there are hundreds of farms that are not doing best management practices. And there is virtually no enforcement by our agencies. What compelling state interest is there to explain why we are not doing a much better job of curtailing pollution at the source? What compelling state interest prevents us from more enforcement of what we know we must be doing? So what would happen here? Would the court tell the Army Corps of Engineers and the involved agencies, stop the releases, boom, just like that? No, because there is a compelling state interest. When the water level was very high, it could flood. You're not going to flood the surrounding communities. So we get that. However, what about the second part? What about making sure that harm was as minimal as possible? From my point of view, our agencies have not done that. So the court could compel our agencies to do more enforcement if that is what is lacking. Make sure that water quality standards are being met. I've read that there's issues with the monitoring. Sometimes the lake water seems better than it is, only because of the scientific tools that they're using. Whatever the issues are that are responsible for the polluted levels of pollution in the lake, the court can compel the agencies to do something. Back in 2021, New York passed its Environmental Rights Amendment. They had their first their first lawsuit, and it was the Attorney General who asked that that lawsuit be dismissed. That court said, no, we're not dismissing this. And one of the things that was stated was state agencies do not have the discretion to ignore the Constitution. This is their job. Our courts can compel our agencies to do what they need to do. A couple other things before I move on. I want you to note that the focus of this amendment is a lot narrower than the one in Pennsylvania or in Montana. That was about clean water, clean air. This is strictly about clean and healthy waters in Florida. That is because in Florida, if you are going to amend the state constitution, it must be narrowly focused on a single subject. On the way to getting this on the ballot, we're going to have to pass a Supreme Court review. Goes to Supreme Court, they make sure that there's nothing in the language of the amendment that is unlawful. If we were shooting for clean air, they would say, violation of the single subject rule. You guys are going to have to change the amendment and start again. We don't want that happening. I want to talk about one more example because it is very important. Can we go to the next slide, please? This was something that was focus of attention at the most recent Everglades Coalition conference, because in U.S. Supreme Court decision about a year or so ago, the Sackett case, the Supreme Court redefined the meaning of waters of the United States, and they opened up millions of acres of wetlands to harm and development and such. And those four attorneys that were on the dais during the coalition were practically beside themselves. This is bad news. After the workshop, I went up to one of the attorneys and I said, wouldn't a constitutional amendment provide protections for our wetlands? She said yes. So anybody with the coalition and you're planning the next conference, I would ask that you make green amendments a focus of one of the workshops there. When I bought my house in Cape Coral in 2016, I was told, don't worry about those 350 acres of wetlands behind your house, Joe. Nobody's ever going to develop there. Well, now somebody wants to develop there. My house was flooded, by the way, during Hurricane Ian, as were hundreds of others in that vicinity. Foot of water, enough to cause us $100,000 worth of damage. It would have been worse if we did not have those hundreds of acres of mangrove forests and other wetlands. They build in those wetlands, aside from ruining the wildlife haven that it is, aside from compromising the super popular park that we have there, they are going to put us at greater risk, because what was 1 foot of water could have been 3 feet of water. And we saw that in Lee County. If we have this constitutional amendment, building in wetlands is a very obvious violation of the amendment. I would love to hear my city council people get up and say what that other gentleman said. Nope, here in Florida, we've got these basic environmental rights, and I'm not going to let it happen. If they did let it happen, we the people would have this at our back. When the DEP issued a permit to build, we can take them to court. So that is the basics of our amendment. If we can go to the next one. I want to deal with some usual questions. Won't this amendment lead to a proliferation of lawsuits? We hear this more than anything else. It will not. How do we know that? Because it hasn't happened in Montana and Pennsylvania that have had these amendments on their books for decades. There are 4 or 5 lawsuits per year. There will not be a proliferation of lawsuits. Plus, they're very expensive. No one's going to undertake this flippantly. Lastly, after a while, after the state loses a few of these cases, they're going to start making better decisions. They'll be they're not going to pursue harmful actions. There'll be less need for lawsuits. Next slide, please. One more. Wouldn't it be a field day for lawyers? They're going to see big dollar signs and come rushing in. No, not going to happen, because these lawsuits aren't about damages. No one's going to be walking away with piles of money. When we win, what happens is agencies have to do what they're supposed to do to clean up our waters. Attorneys will make what attorneys usually make. It's not going to be a big bundle. Next, one more, please. Won't the legislature undermine the amendment? I've been talking about this for a few years now. There's a fair amount of cynicism among Floridians when it comes to this, because we have passed citizens' initiatives only to see the legislature pull the rug out from underneath it afterwards, doing their best to undermine its intent or its effectiveness. Well, you can bet that our attorneys who crafted the language here anticipated that. From the beginning, it was designed to provide protections against what the legislature would try to do. Most recently, between the 2024 amendment and this one, we also got a lot of help from some of Florida's best environmental attorneys to shore it up against efforts by the legislature. Next one, please. And actually 2 clicks because we have to go to the next one. Don't we already have enough laws to protect our waters? We hear this. This one puzzles me. If we had enough laws to protect our waters, would they be in the condition that they are in? They would not. At the very least, we need a law to force our government to enforce their laws. Florida actually has a lot of great water quality laws. We can't get our agencies to enforce them as often as we need. Next one, please. All right, so in order for us to be successful, we need to get 900,000 signed petitions by the end of December 2025. Next one, please. So the other big question people ask is, you guys tried this in 2024. You weren't successful. Why are you going to be successful this time around? Well, number one, when we started in 2022, it was from absolute scratch. Now in 2026, we start with an infrastructure of seasoned volunteers throughout the state. We start with the support of over 200 organizations. We start with a level of public awareness that we did not have. Just last week, Friends of the Everglades gave us a high-profile platform about our amendment. As Gil said recently, there's nobody in Florida who's interested in clean water who has not heard about this amendment at this point. We have also spoken to professionals, and they thought that what we were able to accomplish on strictly volunteer basis and with not a heck of a lot of money was absolutely extraordinary. We have an advisory board this time around. Some of the best, or not the best, but some very noted water champions throughout the state, environmental champions. We're getting advice from campaign industry professionals. It is not our intention at the beginning to do a paid petition gathering effort. That is the most expensive way to go. Professionals have advised us that we get more bang for our buck if we do targeted mail campaigns. We can save millions this way, and that's the path we are going to take first. We're not discounting paid petition gatherers. It obviously has worked for the abortion folks and for the marijuana folks, but it is super expensive. We have professional fundraisers who know what we're about. They're interested. They are working in some of these other initiatives right now. Professional fundraising would start after the upcoming elections. Right now, we're doing volunteer fundraising. So what would I ask of everybody here today? Number one, if we go to the next slide. Well, I'll just tell you, it's okay. Number one, I would ask you to sign the petition. There are petitions in the back of the room. But honestly, one and done is not going to do it. If the 120,000 people who signed last time went out and got just 5 other people to sign, we would have, well, over 600,000 petitions. That would have attracted money. Even if you go out and get 3 other petitions. Personally, I think this is a better investment of time than writing another letter to your legislator. 3, 4, 5 petitions in one envelope. You can mail it to the address in Fort Myers. That's our headquarters, and then we will process it from there. Next, if we go forward, advocate. Tell other people about it. It's one thing if I'm talking about it or writing about it. It's another thing if somebody not associated with our particular organization is doing it. So I would ask that you do that. Letters to the editor, op-eds, etc. Donate. A big difference between the last campaign and this one must be that we have more money this time around. I'll admit, last time I was shy about asking for money. I'm not shy anymore. This is public interest. You're donating money not to benefit anybody in this organization. It benefits you, and it certainly benefits the missions of just about any organization that is looking for better and cleaner and healthier water in Florida. That's what the Rivers Coalition is about. This amendment could advance its mission. That money is not for us, it's really for you. One more, please. If you like what you heard today, we are very dependent upon supporting organizations. Our 600 ambassadors can only collect so many petitions. You have members. You guys can be collecting petitions for us as well. If you liked what you heard today, connect us to those organizations. We'll be happy to talk to them as well. And that's it. If there's time for questions, I'll take questions. Yep.
Joe Giglio of Lake Okeechobee Restoration Initiative. 2 points or 2 questions. Number one, I and my family have already signed a petition, mailed it in. Is that petition good, or do we have to redo it?
Important point. Thank you for that question. If you signed the 2024 petition, you must sign the new one. The only thing, I gave a list of how we're not starting from scratch in so many ways. One way we are starting from scratch is with the petitions. The election cycle ended. None of those previously signed petitions count. Something worth noting. You go back, I don't know, 2011 or so, citizens had, I think, 4 years to collect the required number of petitions. Our legislature knocked that down to 2. It was already a great challenge. They made it an even harder one.
The other comment is a comment of information. Okay, let's assume that this does go through, which I hope it does. How then do the already impacted waters, as you showed Lake Okeechobee's discharge, how does this amendment affect the restitution or the renovation of that particular body and all the other water bodies in Florida that are contaminated? As a scientist, I can tell you it is a very, very, very difficult task. Let me just give you an example. In 1986, Dr. Canfield from University of Florida spoke to LOTEC, Lake Okeechobee Technical Advisory Committee, in 1986, and he said, rather than spend $10 million to move the dairy people from Lake Okeechobee up the Kissimmee River, he said, it's not going to affect the total phosphorus entering into the river. Guess what? I said the same thing the year later. They laughed at me. They ignored him. The concentration of the total phosphorus, which is the major nutrient pollution in Lake Okeechobee, has constantly gone up. So what I'm saying to you is that the waters of Lake Okeechobee, which are a major impact all around here, are continuing to go up. And the government agencies, the state agencies, do not know how to attack that problem. I believe they don't. They really, they manage the system. They don't cure the system. That's why this organization that I formed is intended to cure the system. The cure is simple. You take the mud out of the lake. Then the lake will be restored into its younger days and it will work very well. And I've done this in many other places, not on the sides of Lake Okeechobee. So yes, your amendment, I hope it passes. I will participate, I already have. I'll participate again by re-signing and get as many people as will this organization, I'm quite sure, will do the same thing. But once it's signed, we're still in the predicament of having very bad water quality.
So if the courts compel state agencies to start enforcing best management practices on farms, if we have a more robust BMAP program, shouldn't that start curtailing pollution? No? Then why are we asking farmers to practice best management?
The major problem with Lake Okeechobee and most other lakes is the sediment that's inside. And that's why I say that the amount that comes into Lake Okeechobee, total phosphorus over the last 50 years, 500 metric tons of total phosphorus. With BMAP, it hasn't changed a bit up to 2020. It might have changed the last 4 years. I don't have that data. So what I'm saying to you is that, yes, I think the amendment is absolutely critical, but the state agencies do not know how to cure the problem. And the problem is you have to spend about $10 billion to take the mud out of Lake Okeechobee, and then it will work. They're not ready for it.
So in the interim, is this mic working? All right. There are some people in the chat that had a question. So I think you can just unmute yourself and go ahead. Jack, are you still in there? I think we lost her. Nope, she's still there. All right. Well, Jackie, speak up if you want to say something. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and steal the floor while I have the microphone if I can. And I want to kind of keep the questions on the amendment. I mean, I think everybody in the room here knows the water problems in the state, doesn't get it, and all the problems we have. But with him here in the room, I want to ask and then the thing really, I just want to say, there might be an attorney out there that wants to ask some questions on the legal speak side of things. And I know you're not an attorney, but is there someone who was the author of this amendment? Was it strictly modeled after those other states' amendments? And did they have kind of like a white paper on it, like we would have on legislation? I mean, I'll be honest with you, my concern is I totally behind the amendment, the theme, the message, but my concern would be when it gets to that Supreme Court review, are you ready?
So the amendment was primarily written by a retired Marine Corps judge advocate and also a professor of environmental law and water quality. The other person was a professor emeritus of constitutional law in Florida. Florida Rights of Nature Network also was not going to go ahead with this initiative unless we had a total of 3 constitutional law experts give this a thumbs up. So, and again, most recently, we had some pretty big legal guns come to a table, look it over another time, beef it up a little bit more in order to make sure it does survive Supreme Court review. Yes. Yes. I can. No, it's not available on the website as yet. We got a great FAQ section, legal FAQs, but I'm sure we can get a paper to you.
Can you turn this?
Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
Turn it off. I am so sorry. Unbelievable. I just wanted to thank Joe for his presentation. And yes, there are tons of questions, especially from lawyers like my brother. But the bottom line is we cannot fail on this. It must pass. If it fails, we're totally hosed because then they'll think the people don't want it. And it was just too hard to get going last time. This is now the time with the experience under the belt. The constitutional amendments do make a huge difference. I sat on the Constitutional Review Commission for the state of Florida for 2 years. They can be basically not ignored, but not honored, but you have a lot more power when they're in the Constitution. Carl Wickstrom got the 1996 net ban on the Constitution. I'll do everything I can. Thank you. And our politicians need to know this is coming.
Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome.
Hi. What I wanted to say was that the problem isn't with so much the DEP or the water management districts. It is with our politicians, our Congress, our governor.
Turn it off.
If you speak to Representative Overdorf, he's telling us that we're not supporting him, and he is writing these wonderful environmental bills. What he is not doing is getting the funding for them so that the DEP cannot put them into order, working condition. For instance, they are not doing the monitoring that we need to make sure that the farms and ranches or even the septic tanks are being cleaned out before the water is sent into the canals, which go into the Lake Okeechobee or straight to our rivers or the estuary. This is what we need, is them to get the funding so that they can do the monitoring. They right now presume the information that they are getting from these groups are correct, and we know that's not the case. I contacted South Florida Water Management District about some projects that we're putting in St. Lucie County where they want to fill in our wetlands. And they said to me, well, we allow mitigation. So yes, they can give us money and fill them in. This is a horrible thing because that is one of the reasons that our water would have been cleaner and our health protected if we had these wetlands. But if they have the money so that they can put in wetlands someplace else, not where these projects are going, that's the places where we need the wetlands, then we've lost. The other thing I would like to mention is when you send out the requests, information, mailings, are you going to send it out with prepaid return envelopes? You'd be surprised how you can, some people will just throw it in the garbage if it does not, can't send it back and have to put a stamp on it. Stupid little thing like, what is it, 68 cents now or something of that matter, can make a difference. You do fine. The other thing is that if I do a lecture and I say, well, I would like you to go ahead and not give me money for doing the lecture, but give a donation to clean water, is it going to Florida Rights to Clean Water or Florida Rights of Nature? Where would they mail that into rather than having to go online to provide it for you? Sorry. Thank you.
Go to FloridaRightToCleanWater.org. Ways to help, look down, donate, click there, and then it's, click the right button. You want to go through PayPal, you want to go through Venmo, you could always mail us a check as well. That would go to the Fort Myers office. We anticipate the entire campaign to cost somewhere around $6 to $8 million. No, Pay Petition Gatherers is going to start at 17 million. That's the quote we got.
Thank you very much, Joe. Really appreciate it. Is John Mel here or somebody from Rep-
Hello. Oh, can you hear me? Hi, I'm Amy Eason. I'm the environmental resource engineer. I'm here in place of John Mail, who couldn't attend today. He's sorry that he wasn't able to attend, but I'll give the report for Martin County. We continue to monitor the river and the impacts of Lake Okeechobee on the river. And we've noticed that the cyanobacteria, we have no pending or confirmed reports since April 2nd, past the S80. There was a report in the C44 canal located next to S308 as of April 16th. But those samples are pending results right now. And as it comes to enterococci, there's been no exceedances and all the water is in their good range. We've also been working with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. The Basin Management Action Plan's annual report was presented last month. They'll be in the process of updating that plan, and we'll be meeting with them soon to go over the new update and what would be required for that update for the St. Lucie River and estuary. Also, next week, we are going to be digging up some clams, the Lucinid, I think if I'm saying that right, clam, to see what the population is like. And we are continuing to work on projects to help with water quality within Martin County. We do have an EPA grant that will help us develop a more robust and monitoring plan so that we can really target those projects within Martin County. And that's my report.
I don't see Ben. Is somebody from the city? No. Okay. I believe we have someone from the Water Management District that one. Oh.
Hi, I'm Kathy LaMartine. I'm the regional representative here for Martin and St. Lucie counties. And I can't replace Drew, that's for sure. So I just want to apologize for that. I'm really here today just to give you a couple announcements. The first announcement is that the Water Management District is going to be holding their monthly governing board meeting here in Martin County at the Chastain Center on May 9th. So, please put that on your calendar. And the second one is really, so the Water Management District has upgraded our reference system to use, to measure water elevations and water elevation or level readings. We are now using a new system. It's called the Newer North American Vertical Datum of 1988, which is NAVD 88. instead of the National Geodetic Vertical Datum of 1929, or NGVD 29. So the district's now displaying our water elevation readings in this new system, and it includes data within the district's DB Hydro environmental database for hydrologic, meteorologic, and hydrogeologic and water quality data. And when this is fully implemented, all measurements will be published exclusively in NAVD 88. However, for a period of time, the district will maintain both measurements in our system. The upgrade provides the public and stakeholders with scientifically accurate information about levels for water bodies in our region. And while there's no difference in the actual water level, the water level readings will be different. So the NAVD 88 measurement system will read about 0.6 feet to 1.6 feet less than the readings in the older NGVD 29 measurement system. I know this is difficult, but here's an example, like Lake Okeechobee today, in the old system, what you're used to seeing today, it's reading 14.54 feet. In the new system today, it's reading 13.23 feet. Okay, so that's the new reading. So it's something that you're going to have to get used to. Because it's a new system. As said, the old system was based on 1929 data. This is based on 1988 data. So it's just a more correct system.
I'd like to know what time and which building in IRSC it's going to be.
First of all, it's May 9th. May 9th, and it's the Chastain Center in the Johnson Auditorium.
About 9 on?
Yeah, Johnson Auditorium at 9 a.m.
IRCC, right?
IRS.
While we're waiting, Bill, can you give your report?
Sure. Just two things I'm going to mention here. Yesterday, you may have seen Governor DeSantis was down in West Palm Beach announcing $1.5 billion for everybody's restoration of water quality improvements. That includes $614 million for SERP projects, including the EAA reservoir, $100 million for phase 2 of the C51 reservoir, so to help reduce discharges to the Lake Worth Lagoon, $100 million for the Indian River Lagoon, $45 million for this campaign. So money's good. Cracking down on pollution, so we don't have to build so many projects to clean the water after the fact would be even better. So, okay. The other thing I wanted to mention was the Vote Water and Friends of the Everglades, and I know Florida Oceanographic were among 27 organizations and businesses that signed a veto request to Governor DeSantis for there are two water quality studies that were funded in this year's budget. There was a $25 million study that is supposed to analyze impaired rivers, including upstream sources, and determine the root cause of this impairment. Unfortunately, as we understand it, the money, $25 million, goes to the water school of Florida Gulf Coast University. But apparently this is going to be a pass-through contract. They're going to have someone else do the study. And from the letter, it says a new study conducted by an unknown contractor to determine the already known sources of pollution to Florida's rivers is completely unnecessary, a waste of taxpayer dollars, and will delay important rules and projects necessary to restore Florida's waters. There's always the possibility too that this study is kind of a stalking horse, that they're going to try to use the results to further the interests of perhaps, the ag or sugar industry, something along those lines. Delay cracking down on pollution if we ever have to do that. The other study is a $4 million study. This has the height. Realize this, BMAPs are not formulated with water quality in mind. They are formulated first and foremost to raise agricultural yields And whatever impact that has on water quality is purely incidental. So we're asking that the $4 million study, which is going to lead to essentially agricultural producers using more fertilizer, permitted to use more fertilizer as part of best management practices. We're asking that that study be shot down too. Indeed.
Thank you. Is there anybody here with a report on River Kids? Please.
Hey, Kelly, just talk really loud because it's going through my computer now here. They can't hear you on Zoom without the mic. They're going through mine.
Is it on? Cool. Yes. So just a quick update, River Kids has been pretty busy this first part of the year. I think we managed to attend in some capacity 11 or 12 events. A few speaking opportunities at the Board of County Commissioners, and this is kind of going back since we haven't had a report out in a couple months. Talking on water quality issues, support of Martin County Forever. We did a sign making and restoration project with the Environmental Studies Center. If you go down across from the Environmental Studies Center, there's a whole new shoreline restoration planting that the River Kids participated in.
Well, I'm just,
I
they're
think we
filming.
planted 100 something plants in record time. I need them all to come to my house now, do the same. When you plant 102 plants with just you and your husband, it takes a lot, so. We went to the Boatwater Town Hall. We participated and did a really cool water quality activity at Waterfest. I've been to many Rivers Coalition meetings, the adults in the room anyway. We attended the Florida Oceanographic Town Hall. Casey just spoke at the Junior Master Gardeners program last week, talking about the importance of shoreline restoration and trying to figure out if there are more projects that we can get the kids involved in. And we did the Environmental Studies Spring Celebration this last week too. So lots of River Kids activity going on. If there are other events or things that you would like us to participate in or think it would be great for the kids to participate in, definitely let us know. We've got the Great American Cleanup and the Toxic Trail Run coming up this summer. And then really just looking for education and advocacy things that we can participate in moving forward. So yeah, that's my update.
Hello, everybody. I'm Todd Weissing. I'm the coordinator of the Rivers Coalition Speakers Bureau. We're the outreach program for the Rivers Coalition. I thought we had a busy couple of months. We've had a couple of speaking engagements, but the River Kids are very busy. So we were invited to speak at the Fort Pierce Yacht Club a couple of months ago, and then more recently at the Hidden Harbor Estates. Kathy's here to represent them. Appreciate the invitation, appreciate the opportunity for us to go out and speak and provide our message. There's a lot going on, and we need to continue to do this. Again, it's our outreach program. If you are part of an organization or you know of an organization that's looking for a speaker, we'll go anywhere, we'll talk to anybody, we're happy to do it, okay? So call on us. How do you get a speaker? Go to riverscoalitions.org, front page, toggle down to request a speaker. Click on that and I'll get the notification. Thanks.
Happy Earth Day belatedly. It has been a busy spring for the Riverkeeper. We've had a couple fundraisers. They were successful. I do want you all to notice that the lagoon is improving. Seagrasses are coming back, but so are manatees and green sea turtles. Please stay in the channel. The water clarity is not great. There's a lot of suspended solids. The seagrasses are struggling to get enough sunlight. And, you know, often this sea turtle is almost invisible with this water quality in the estuary. So please be careful if you're out boating. Staying off the flats is better for the flats than you know, mooring up on them. The Earth Day was an interesting day. We've got lots of issues going on. I do want to inform you all generally that there is a mangrove disease.
Yeah,
That
I
is
have
going to make
Mhm.
mangrove recovery very, very difficult. We are working
But I don't have the volume on there.
with UCF and a couple other resources to come up with a remedy for this pathogen. And more will be revealed as we work for that. But if you see mangroves that are suffering, that are turning yellow and then brown, it is likely a fungal infection with a,
Into the screen, I mean, here.
becoming pathogenic when these funguses that exist in nature
See if
combine,
it's showing up there.
and also when those plants are stressed out. So we're gonna be working very carefully with a couple of organizations to monitor mangroves up and down the Universal Laguna. But this is something that we're about to ring the bell on, to get very, very concerned about. Also, Orca is going to be, taking fish samples still to look at what sort of chemical, or chemical accumulations are happening in those fish. So if you do get a fish sample, please contact Orca.
The computer doesn't sound like it's something that doesn't show up on.
Thank you, Todd, for anything else?
Well, I had a seagrass report, but we just sacrificed my laptop for the rest of the meeting. It's running the audio. People that are online. Yeah, I was just about to pull up a graphic on that V-data and stuff. I can post it on my website or something. But yeah, there's a tide station here at the Roosevelt Bridge. So I pulled up the graph of the tide station. They have a page on where you can see all these data, the data month. And I just put a little arrow on there so you can see the difference between how that NGV 29, for example, is below our mean tide here at the bridge, and the 88 is going to be above it. And it's nice when you see all the arrows, you see all these different tide levels, and you see the two data. It kind of makes it click in your head what's going on here. And it's not like the water levels are changing. It's just the way we measure the water level is changing. I had a seagrass aerial that's also on my website that came in, a couple days ago. There's seagrass, appearing from the satellite. I haven't been out there in a couple of weeks, but we believe there's grass out there, so it's going to be kind of made through this discharge event without, too much damage. It seems like out there. It's more seasonal as far as the grasses maybe. And then the only other thing is it's also on my website. I have that live flow map now. It's the first link on the top of the site, but I'll show you the live flows at all the flow stations for the South Florida Water Management District. A lot of those folks aren't here today, but I've noticed, and if anybody else knows about it, before that the C44 reservoir has been, there's been, I don't want to call it discharge, but outflow from the C44 reservoir to the tune of about 2,300 CFS. So that's interesting. I think it was like 11,000 acre feet maybe in the last 2 days. So water's coming out of there. You can see the little arrow coming out of the reservoir, all the little arrows inside the SDA, and then this 2,300 CFS or so going back to the canal. I'm guessing you're using that to keep the canal back at level. This thing is not completely operational right now, so it's just kind of interesting that we're kind of cleaning water and then putting it back in the canal so it can be sent back to ag. It'll be interesting to see how this thing, when it is eventually online, how it's going to operate as far as the clean the water, and we're going to have to discharge to the river. Let's send the clean water to the river, let's send the dirty water back into the reservoir, clean in the SDA, and it's doing its job. So it's just interesting. I don't know if anybody has any information. I don't hear from the county. The people that know aren't here today because they're all at the meeting. I think that's all I have. And sorry for the people online. The laptop that was running the meeting didn't have a plug in it, not a battery, so swap laptop showed up.
The thing that I wanted to be sure of was the water that's coming out of the reservoir there. If I understand correctly, none of that is coming through S80. Is that right? No.
Yeah, correct. There hasn't been any discharges to the St. Lucie from the C44 canal since the before closed the gate and that schedule. And the schedules are also on there too. I think we have some coming up in the next presentation. The pulse release. But yeah, this is just water returning back to the canal.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Please.
I'm Caroline Leonard, and I have the authorization to send any of these right to clean water petitions into the supervisor of elections for Martin County. I did it last time. You know, we're gonna get the newest certification to do that, so if you want to give it to me today. And if you have some from Port St. Lucie, I can send it to Diane. And so just be aware of that, or you can mail it to the address on the petition if you wish, but I'll be happy to take them in to the supervisor of elections for you. Thank you.
I have a question on that. I noticed that like on the Department of State website, they have all the information about the amendment. And it has the number of signatures underneath from each county, kind of a status screen. Like, do you know when they eventually update those numbers, or are you just given all at the end and just once you have all your signatures? Like, do you know? They update them continually, as they have the ability to do so. They're also involved with other, petitions going on at the time. We will be submitting petitions on a monthly basis. So I would think on a monthly basis, you'll see, what the verified petitions number is. You go to the DOE website.
Thank you. I like.
So it goes back to Todd. Thanks for that information about the SDA, the C-44 reservoir and SDA discharging. Is there any water quality monitoring being done of that water that's coming back in? Yes, I hate to keep directing you back to my site, but if on that same page, it's defaulting now to the flow, so you can see the live flow. But if you go up to the menu, and I had my laptop, I guess it is plugged in over there, but the big screen's not working here for him. If you go up to the live data menu and drop it down, it's got phosphorus, nitrogen, microsystem, but that's not being measured for application. But it does have phosphorus and nitrogen. It's always a couple, and this is all from the South Florida Water Management Districts, Hydro. And so it's always about 3 weeks old, at least. And but yes, you know, sometimes you can see that it's coming out a little cleaner than it's going in, but in this system's just getting up and running. But yes, there is water quality sampling in the SDA and going into the reservoir.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to introduce myself. I'm Paula McLeese. I've been working with Joe for almost 3 years now. And Carol, I haven't met you, but we have worked with the DECF organization. I am the new regional director. I cover Palm Beach County, Martin County, St. Lucie County, and Okeechobee County. So I am authorized to take all these petitions that I hope you give me today to the supervisor of elections in all 4 counties. You can outreach me on our website. I will be the RG of the Southeast area. I'm looking for volunteers to collect petitions at events that either you set up or I set up. This is a team effort. I used to say the last petition was it takes a village. This petition for 2026, it's going to take an army. And I need all of you to help me do this. So again, reach out to me through the website. And I'd love to work with all of you. Thanks for signing today.
Thank you. Valentina, we have a report.
Yes, we do. I don't know, are you able to get the presentation?
The big
up, or-
screen is not working.
All right, it's
You
okay.
can
I can
share
just
it a little.
summarize. Oh, thank you.
We can share it on here.
That's always good. Well, maybe what we can do, I don't know if we submit like meeting minutes after, and maybe you can get that presentation.
Yes, we
emailed
do.
after. But essentially,
got it.
the water quality report, mostly related.
Here,
to
you can show
service.
this one.
So I had all the pulses that were done, essentially the started
You want to combine it?
mid-February and February 17th and ended, at the end of March. And, you know, very obvious, since they brought the discharges, their water quality has been improving, and what that means is that salinities have returned to the estuary. Mostly the North Fork and the South Fork, the C-44 canal connects at the South Fork of our estuary, and that's where, the salinities were at its worst, but also the North Fork essentially turned freshwater. But those
I'm already
salinities
sharing
have
it on
mostly
mine.
returned. And one of the other things that we keep track of as Florida Oceanographic is our oysters.
and our seagrass salinities for both of those have returned to their optimum level, which is especially good at the time of year because, that's when oysters are farming.
I'm on Zoom.
And they need
Okay.
the right
I'll
salinity to
just
be able to do
know
that.
that it's working.
So we monitor, how many staff we're getting. And so far, the recruitment has not been great, which is not surprising given that salinities have been so inconsistent. But now that they have returned to normal, we're hoping that improves.
Valentina, it's up there now.
Oh.
So let me know if I'm on the right slide.
Great. Well, maybe we can start at the discharge schedule, just so people take a look at that. So all the way down.
Whoops, hang on. We did have it. I lost it. Try again. This is driving me crazy. Okay.
Well, maybe in the meanwhile, while we get that up, does anyone have any questions? At Florida Oceanographic, we have a weekly water report that you can sign up to. It is delivered via email. So if you're interested in that, please go to our website and you can, get a report of dissolved oxygen, water temperature, water clarity, all that.
Got it.
No, so that the county monitors that.
I'm
So
not
they
sure.
would be, I don't know if Amy, do you have anything as the on the inshore?
I'm looking at yours.
When we were looking at the pulses before, the salinity wasn't that bad. They were, yeah, it wasn't that bad. And I would assume right now it's all back to normal. Yeah, I haven't looked at it in a while, but when we were looking at the pulses and seeing the differences, it was in a, not a good range, but it wasn't to where it was stressful or anything like that. So, yeah,